Kia ora koutou, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to the Project Services and Operations Committee, 4th of August 2020. Welcome to elected member colleagues and staff and, of course, presenters and members of the public and, of course, members of the media. We welcome you all here today. Just a reminder that this is being live streamed on YouTube, and so just ask that elected members please turn your phones to silent or off, and please remember to speak clearly into your microphone for so that people who are watching online can hear us clearly. Welcome everyone again. Just want to call for apologies. I have one apology from Mayor Powell. And I think everyone else is here, so I'm happy to move that apology. Can I have a seconder, please? Deputy Mayor Salisbury, thank you. All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. We've got three presentations today in the public forum, and we always appreciate the public coming and speaking to us and giving us a really clear idea or clearer idea on what's happening in the community of Tauranga City. So first of all, I'd like to welcome three young ladies from the Youth Advisory Group. We have Lucy Hill, Amber Harrison, and also we have Kura. Welcome. Come up to the table, ladies. And if we've got three chairs there, and we're looking forward to hearing and learning more about what the Youth Advisory Group is and does in relation to council. So, kia ora.
Good morning, and thank you for having us here to speak today. Myself and Lucy are here today on behalf of the Youth Advisory Council to talk to you a little bit about what we do and the view we have for Tauranga as youth. I'm 18 years old and currently at Otamotai College, and next year I plan to leave Tauranga to pursue a career in medicine. The Youth Advisory Group here at Tauranga City Council are a group of 12 strong-minded youth who come from differing backgrounds but all have the same passion to give a voice to youth within our community. We want to create a place where youth feel supported to grow and be successful. We as a group aim to ensure that youth and what's important to youth are at the heart of everything we do, putting their values and concerns first. We want to make sure that youth feel like that their input into our community is valued and that people like you listen to them when you're making your decisions. You may have heard about a campaign we ran last year called Outvote Boomers. The aim of this campaign was to get people and youth to care about voting. We started conversation and educated them about voting. We reached over 52,000 youth within Tauranga, aged 16 to 35. We made media headlines across New Zealand and increased the voter turnout in youth by 2%. For us, this campaign was a huge success. The Youth Advisory Group would also love to see a shift in the way that Tauranga accommodates youth over the next 10 years. We believe Tauranga has the potential to be a thriving hub, a revitalised city that boasts opportunity and a sense of identity and culture. But unfortunately, with an empty CVD, a lack of community, and unexciting events for youth to attend, we don't feel that Tauranga offers youth as much as it could. One youth even quoted that it feels like the character has been sucked out of Tauranga City. Over the next 5 to 10 years, we would love to see a focus on the development of youth spaces and a Tauranga that caters for and cares about youth opinion. Concerts and music festivals, drive-in movies, cultural festivals, sports events, and more of the like could help do this. This would also create opportunities for youth to get outside and socialise more in a tech-driven society. After a vital uptake survey of over 600 youth in Tauranga aged 16 to 24, we discovered that at current, 74% of youth are not excited about the events that are currently offered in Tauranga. If we want to retain youth and entice more youth to come to Tauranga, this is a concerning statistic. This is where you as council can help us. By starting to provide for and listen to what youth want. This could be done through a youth hub/centre in the city. This would be a multi-purpose space with a gym or basketball court for people to come together and be active or host weekly sports competitions. It could have study spaces, run weekly games nights or quiz nights, and even have a cheap food centre with a bar, or simply just a place for youth to come together and hang out. On top of this, youth would like to see Tauranga develop a stronger sense of identity and promote culture. This was also backed up by the survey conducted, finding that only 7% of youth currently believe Tauranga reflects a strong sense of culture and heritage. At current, most of the artworks around the city are very Australian-like. We would love to see more Māori/New Zealand-inspired pieces to really bring a sense of pride to our city. This could even be an opportunity for youth student artists to come together and collaborate on murals. It's clear to us that youth have a vision for the Tauranga they would like to grow up in, a more vibrant, more engaging city. But we need your support as a council to make this happen. So what do you have planned for our CBD?
Thanks, Amber. So what the Youth Advisory Group are currently working on is a project for Florofest, which is happening in September. So if you don't already know about Florofest, it's Tauranga's celebration of the National Mental Health Awareness Week, and it will be held at Memorial Park. So mental health is a topic we've seen as important to our community and the youth. So we are working on a project for that provides a different understanding of how we can support our own mental health. And it'll be the stall that we're holding will be creative and engaging, particularly for youth. So we'll be happy to provide more detail on that when we see you at our stall in September. So now I'll be talking to a little bit extra, going on from what Amber said. So our concerns for the youth in the Bay of Plenty is the retention of youth, and I'll be talking to the impacts of this on the community. So workplaces that hire youth and provide opportunities that develop our careers are scarce here. So few businesses and organisations such as the council hold internship or graduate programs that offer career development or a stepping stone to begin a fulfilling career, despite many organisations being large, employing hundreds of people here in Tauranga. So this is something the Youth Advisory Group has been questioning. Why in this town are youth unable to find these opportunities? So what you would expect to happen does happen. Youth leave the Bay to other large cities in the hope to obtain further studies or employment with futures. Those who do stay have issues some would categorise as even worse, feelings of loneliness. A study conducted this year on over 600 youth in Tauranga found that of those aged 16 to 24 years old, 26% feel alone often or all of the time, which was quite a lot higher than Tauranga overall, which is at 11%. And considering that 88% of youth have high levels of contact with their friends and family, these findings are of concern. Many survey respondents highlighted this, with one in particular saying, in quotes, "I'm quite young and struggle to find other people my age in Tauranga." So now it's no surprise that 47% of youth here in Tauranga do not feel connected to the community. So now we have low levels of employment and youth development programs, and we have feelings of loneliness and isolation from the community. So what was interesting in this survey is what we would like to youth would like to change is one, traffic and transport, which is not really surprising. And the second thing they would like to change in Tauranga is the lack of events and facilities for this age group. As we feel, another quote, "It gets boring if the only thing for teenagers to do in winter is drive around at night." And another one, "Most events are targeted towards older people." So what youth need in Tauranga is the development of opportunities that enable us to get into the beginning of our fulfilling careers. Businesses and organisations need incentives and leadership to begin doing this. So this is where the council comes in. And second, what we need is facilities and events targeted for youth to help the large proportion who feel lonely and isolated. Think youth hubs making a space for connections to form at any time of the day, and one that holds evening events that are safe and social. So this is also where the council comes in. Improving both employment and facilities will increase the retention of youth in the Bay. It will improve the well-being of our community. It will add what our businesses need, a new generation of thinking, creativity and innovation. And it will entice others from further afield to come reside here and grow in their careers. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, Kura, did you want to say anything? Because I know you're very articulate when I've heard you before.
Sorry guys, kia ora, ko Kura Rauringa Hudson tōku ingoa. I'm the chairperson of the Youth Advisory Group, so I'm just here in support of Lucy and Amber. Thank you.
Thank you, well done. And yeah, well said, ladies. We've got time for one or two questions. Oh, there's so many of them. I'll get the youngest elected member, Yako. Councillor
Yeah, morena koutou. So it'd be quite useful, I think, on some key issues to bounce maybe different viewpoints of council members off the Youth Advisory Board. I'm sort of envisioning maybe people with different opinions on a topic, like maybe me and Councillor Morris could go along and share two sides of a debate and then get your thoughts on what you think on that decision with council. Is that something you'd be open to?
Sorry guys. Yep, 100%. We've had councillors come before and we were very open and we're also very open-minded. We understand as young people that we have a lot of life experience to come and we're be excited to see you guys and especially get excited to see a bit of a debate going.
There's plenty of that happening here. And I'll count Deputy Mayor Salisbury. Oh, you didn't? I'll go for the other end of the spectrum, shall I say. Councillor Granger.
Not too sure what he means by the other end. Funny that. Hey, look, thanks ladies coming in. And Amber, thank you for your presentation. You mentioned about more involvement within the city and the loneliness and isolation with our community, etc. There's two questions I do want to ask. What's your thoughts maybe on visiting us a little bit more often as a full council, maybe once every 2 months to that effect for an hour or something set aside? Because to me, the involvement I've had in the past with the council, admittedly, I don't think we've spent enough time with the youth. So you've got to start somewhere, and for me, let's just throw that forward. So I'll get you to answer. And the other one, I couldn't get my head around too. You mentioned here the artworks in the city are very Australian-like. You know, I couldn't see any underarm bowlers or anything on walls or anything. But can you give us a little bit of clarity on that?
Yeah, no, I think we would love to come and present to council more. We have, obviously as a group, we meet and we can talk about things, but we'd love to take our ideas further and get more input on them. So having your guys' support would be really great. And the artworks that I was talking about, if you headed over to the Mount, there's a few on the sides of the walls, and one is blue and green and it has a cat with sunglasses on it. And there's also another one which is black and white and it has like alien drawings and ghosts on it, which to me, yeah, it might be cool to get a photo with, but it has no meaning to me really. It would be cool to take those away and put something more meaningful up there, I think. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I'm going to just indulge Councillor Kitty one quick question.
Great, I'll speak really quickly. So I'm just, good like that. So I'm just wondering if it would be a great idea, if it's okay with the councillors, that you could come in for maybe the hour, like Bill said, and do maybe a whiteboard workshop, just to understand where you're coming from, where we can go, who could be helping championing that. I have 3 kids, all your ages, well not all, I haven't got triplets, but it'd be really good because I know exactly what they say and I'd love to be involved with something like this. It'd be amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree, Councillor Kitty. I think 10 minutes here in a council meeting is not the right sort of length of time nor the forum to meaningfully engage. So I think we can, we'll definitely put it in the minutes to follow up and we can organise something in the next wee while. So thank you again for coming in and presenting, and keep up the great work on advocating for youth in Tauranga. Thank you. Thank you. Now, the next public forum presentation is Kathy Webb from Western Bay Plenty Neighbourhood Support, and ably supported by Bruce Mason. So welcome, Kathy and Bruce, and we've got a presentation. Sorry, I should have mentioned there is a 10-minute time limit for the public forum. So thank you very much.
Good morning, councillors and everybody else. Some of you I know, some of you I don't. So as Councillor Clout says, my name's Kathy Webb. I'm the chair of Western Bay Plenty Neighbourhood Support, and this is our main man, Brucey, Bruce Banks. So it's interesting that people have mentioned loneliness and isolation, because neighbourhood support is something that can help with that problem, and we all have heard and read many things about loneliness and isolation. But the outcome that we want to see in our community is safe, supported and connected communities. That is our vision, and our driving mission is so people will feel safe in their home and in their neighbourhoods. People will be supported and able to find, receive and give support in their neighbourhoods. They have a sense of belonging, respect and inclusion, no matter who they are and what their background. People are connected through welcoming and friendly relationships, spaces, places and communication networks, and they're confident to take action with others in their community. So neighbourhood support, those are the key things that drive us, and we have a network of almost 16,000 households in this area, so we're quite well connected. A lot of that is, well, I mean, it's developed over many years, but a lot of that's due to Bruce's work currently too. So this year our numbers have increased. Oops. These are our stats for this year compared with last year. So now our total is 15,433, and this year we have spent quite a bit of time validating our database. Many people have databases with big numbers, but we know that ours are accurate because we have spent many hours. We have a person dedicated to when our newsletters bounce back, they ring, all sorts of, any reason something happens, we ring and check those people. And those checks also have developed into welfare checks, especially in the COVID situation. People love to get connection from anybody, but especially neighbourhood support. So Katrina is our database admin, and she works, how many hours? 10 hours a week. 10 hours a week paid. So Bruce, as well, I have introduced you, I'm sorry I'm talking for Bruce, but some of the things that Bruce has brought to our organisation to help connect our neighbours are a dedicated system that we use to connect with new people and enrol them into our database and introduce them to their own neighbours. When we have a driveway meeting, it's amazing to I've had one in my home many years ago now, but the noise is incredible of people meeting their neighbours, talking about where do you live, what do you do, what are your kids, I've seen them in the street. And introducing people for that first time is a really critical thing. So Bruce has developed processes and procedures so that we all do that in a consistent approach. And we do that in partnership with the police. So everybody, well, no, not everybody loves the police, but the police are very popular when they come to neighbourhood meetings. The kids like to sit in the cars. They just love to meet a real policeman. So also this year, welcome.
A formal.
That's okay. We like the formal ones too. So these are the people that have supported us. And we did a survey just recently at the end of last year and surveyed quite a wide proportion of our database, and 91% of people find us useful? No, most of that 91% loved us. They really enjoy being part of us and being connected by our newsletter, which goes out fortnightly to those 15,433 or whatever the number was, people. So we know that those people read it. 60% open that newsletter, which is a very high percentage. I think the industry standard is around 6% that people open it. So we get 60%. We know they read it. Other things that we've been involved in are, we were involved in the Gate Power project. We've actually been involved in that Gate Power project twice, because I know before Bruce's time I was involved in it to connect in that neighbourhood, and this time again. And so I guess that's a bit about what's been happening this year, but I just would like to reiterate that, and you will all know this, that neighbourhood support runs on our volunteers. We rely on our coordinators, whether they're at a street level or an area level, that those coordinators are active, and that's something else that Bruce has done. He has developed a little training program for any new group that's formed. Coordinators are all trained and encouraged. Keeping them motivated is a bit of a mission, but we try to do that through the newsletters and through these, and also we have forums now where coordinators can meet together and discuss various issues. So we're actually having a big meeting on the 12th of August in Otamotai, which is a drive to establish more groups in the Otamotai area. So if anybody would like to come, you're very welcome. It's at 6:30 at the Otamotai Primary. Bruce, would you like to say something? I've probably left you nothing to say.
Yeah, to be honest, thank you very much for having us along today. Kathy's probably said it all. There's very, very little more that I could add to that, except that the last year we have had significant growth, significant improvement in what we've got as far as our people are concerned. And our area coordinators have got such a very keen group of people who do some fantastic volunteer work out in the field. And if we added up those many, I'd say hundreds, there'll be thousands of volunteer hours that go into our community to try and make it a safer and better place to live.
And all that contributes in some small way to removing loneliness and isolation. It is a way to be able to connect people, because we all know that the people you live next door to can be a real pain, or they can be an amazing asset.
Thank you, Kathy and Bruce. Before we go to any questions, how does neighbourhood support in the Western Bay compare to other areas around New Zealand? Is it?
So we are part of a national, we're independent, an independent organisation. It works a bit like a federation. So we have a New Zealand office. Now our New Zealand, Neighbourhood Support New Zealand recently rebranded, and that has been one of the projects that we've rolled out this year. So you will see our logo up there is actually different to what we're wearing. That's to save us money, so we don't have to get rid of everything and go with a new thing. We're gradually bringing that new brand, which is much more colourful and depicts the wider diversity of our communities better.
Thank you. Councillor Baldock.
Thank you, Kathy and Bruce. Kathy Webb, have you met Susan Jamieson sitting over there?
No? Sorry. Yes.
Because while you're telling the story of how many people open your newsletter and participate, I'm thinking maybe those members might like to contribute to our engagement proposals for getting feedback from the community, and Susan is in charge of that, and maybe...
Yes, and we're happy to put little things in our newsletter. We like to have like a sentence with a link. But yes, and we do often put messages in our newsletter around identifying where domestic abuse is happening, victim support, and some of those other agencies, certainly civil defence or emergency management, and those types of areas.
Sometimes we have to ask permission before we can
Yeah.
do things, but if
But we
you'd
can
be
put-
willing to work with that, that would be
Yeah.
really good.
Yep, certainly. We're always looking for something different.
Thank you. Councillor Granger.
Hey, thanks, thanks, Kathy and Bruce. Just in regards to what was brought up before on the other slide, the other supporters, the likes of the police, the tech, the Lions, and the pub charities and that, and of course the $25,000.
And TCC,
Sorry?
and you.
And that's what I was going to say, and the $25,000 that we support every year. Is that I'm going to ask, is that enough?
No.
I thought I would hear
Silly
that.
question, really.
And I asked that basically because I personally know, as others do, for the amount of work that you guys do and the amount of interest that the neighbourhoods have has been fantastic. You've just shown that on the slide as regards the increase. It's just that something.
So we're very conscious of the funding, and we're very conscious that the ratepayer can't pay for everything.
I can understand that, but the thing is I think for what is happening here, it's supporting one another. Everybody's in a neighbourhood, and it's our community, and support. You know, it's the top of the list. It's a priority. So maybe it's something that we should think as the council as regards to more. I feel capital coming back towards you guys because of that reason, and let's see what we can do to help support.
We would be very happy with that,
Yeah,
of course.
thanks.
However, we are also Bruce came up with this great idea. So every newsletter that goes out has a little slip on the bottom called the Small Change Campaign. And we get quite a few donations. When I say quite a few, we'd be lucky if we got 2,000 a year. But it's an expression of trust and that people want to be supported by us.
Okay. That extra capital, if it did come by your way,
Wonderful.
You can. I'm not
Absolutely.
saying you can improve and make things
Yes.
a little bit better for the community out there as well.
Yes.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you. I think what Councillor Granger is asking for is your bank account details.
Okay, yep.
Thank you for your generous support.
I'll see you
Councillor
after.
Granger. Thank you. So thank you very much, Kathy and Bruce, for the fantastic work you do in our communities. Thanks again. Thank you. Our final public forum speaker today is Robin Rimmer, who is speaking to us about the Welcome Bay estuary. I understand, Robin, you've got quite a few photos, so you'll be able to get through those. And we've got 10 minutes, Robin, and if you've got time at the end for questions, we'll welcome that opportunity.
Okay, thank you. To understand our community's request for a moratorium on building estuary infrastructure, you have to understand something about the history behind it. Over a period of 40 years, the Tauranga City Council has probably had 3 major incursions into the Welcome Bay estuary. The first of these incursions occurred in about 1980 with the installation of a sewerage system around a significant part of the Welcome Bay estuary. Before this incursion, the western part of the estuary was, as shown in the photograph, a healthy open environment, rich in bird and fish life, where relatives swam between my great-uncle George's house and my grandfather's, and where my father's cousin moored his boat and sailed his boat before giving his life to his country as a bomber pilot. Unfortunately, the Tauranga City Council could not see the value or the beauty or how this environment, what this environment meant to residents, and embarked upon its sewage system scheme. And this is how they dealt with that same environment. The impact of this decision, which was made without consultation, is still felt today, and within 3 years of that scheme being put in, the same scene looked and looks like this. We now have an expanse of mangroves which have thrived on a rich diet of silt, sediment, clay, debris, dirt, and have swallowed up a considerable amount of rubbish. We now have an area that is completely devoid of fish life and seriously depleted in bird life. Sic transit gloria mundi. The second incursion occurred apparently between 1997 and 2005, when council decided to place a large setback on all properties near or beside estuaries. No property owners were consulted or informed in any way. It was, in effect, a phantom consultation. In the meantime, the third incursion occurred around 2007. It was called the Harbour Reserves Management Plan. It affected all estuaries in Tauranga and was put out for public consultation. For Welcome Bay, it proposed a network of walkways circumnavigating the entire estuary. This was a large call, placing a heavy footprint on a small, struggling, and, as you can see, damaged estuary. Not surprisingly, 36 submissions representing over 100 people opposed the plan, while 4 submissions were in favour. Naturally, the 36 submitters requested a full account of the consultation. We did receive a document. We expected it to say, Council acknowledges the overwhelming opposition to this plan, but has dismissed all objections for the following comprehensive and compelling reasons. But actually it didn't say that at all. It gave us 9 pages, but it turned out that the 9 pages were mostly a summary of the submissions, and the conclusion was presented in 1 phrase and 1 sentence. The phrase read, "as per staff comment," full stop. Didn't mean much to us at all. And the sentence was, Council confirmed its desire to provide a walkway around the Esplanade Reserve area of Welcome Bay as proposed. So we have yet to find out really in what way that would be considered a consultation. Meanwhile, the second incursion, the imposition of a setback by a phantom consultation, was discovered by property owners in 2009 and generated huge antipathy towards the council. It puzzled property owners how council would place a large, draconian, money-yielding setback on private property on the grounds of environmental protection, yet at the same time could take so little interest in caring for the estuaries themselves. For example, council imposed a huge setback on my family's property, over 1,000 square metres, but on the estuary side of that same property has allowed so much rubbish and debris that we have to spend up to 50 hours a year just for the privilege of not having to live beside something which would be akin to a rubbish dump. The last 10 years, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, this is only one family, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, and so it goes on. Also, from our property upon which council has placed its bureaucracy, we can observe the unacceptable amount of sediment, silt, clay, dirt, debris that is being debauched into this part of the estuary, but which we are powerless to stem. These are a few examples. We cannot make planners and councillors become environmentalists. We cannot make them care about the endangered estuary fauna, as for example in Welcome Bay, the black shag. The banded rail, the fernbird and the bittern. Unfortunately, no photographs for them because they are casualties of council policy. They are gone. But we do believe that council should at least accept that there are people who do love the estuary. There are those who do care for the estuary fauna and who are entitled to hold different views from that held by paid public servants. These are people who are entitled not only to present their views in consultation, but also to have them assessed and not arbitrarily rejected, as in the case of 2007. Finally, given the damage that council policies have inflicted on the Welcome Bay estuary, and given the fact that council has extended its bureaucracy onto private property on the pretext, I should say, grounds, I guess, of environmental protection, a moratorium would give council the opportunity to carry out the following 12 actions, which I have already forwarded to councillors, so I won't run through them again now. While these actions relate first and foremost to the Welcome Bay estuary, most of them also relate to other estuaries and estuary environments in Tauranga, all of whom would benefit from a moratorium and all of whom would benefit from a council review of its environmental and democratic record. In his book of poems, Brian Turner urges local communities to stand up for the environment. He quotes from a poem by Dave Witherow, "Without memory and the anger that memory evokes, we surrender all that is best of our country to the complacent, the greedy, and the ignorant." Just one moment.
Are you supposed to be scrolling up? Or
Yeah, I'm just getting back to the beginning.
Okay.
I'm nearly there. For me, in that those words, the words memory and the anger of memory are very relevant. I'd like to thank all those councillors who have responded and acknowledged our request for a moratorium, and to those who haven't responded at all, that's fine. You may yet surprise us. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Robin. Perfect timing. Yeah, look, we've received the petition and the recommendations you've put to us, so they have not been lost in the system, and so yeah, I'm sure that we will be able to come back to you in due course. But thank you very much for expressing your concerns, particularly around the environment, and of course a lot of this is the purvey of the Bay Plenty Regional Council as well, and so I assume you've been talking to them as well. So thank you very much, Robin. Appreciate you coming along today.
Good, thank you.
Moving on to point 3, acceptance of late items. I don't believe there are any. Confidential business to be transferred into the open. I don't believe there is any. In terms of change of order of business, I'm going to suggest that we go on to item 9.2, which is the presentation from TAF the annual report on the council's use of toxic agrochemicals for vegetation management policy, because we've got members here who are would like to, and I think that's a good idea to have them in first. So can someone please move the acceptance of that change of order? Thank you, Councillor Arbery, seconded by Councillor Kitty. Thank you. I'll put that. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Confirmation of minutes. We'll just get through the minutes first, and there may be one or two other things. Confirmation of minutes. The minutes of the previous PSOC meeting on the 23rd of June are there. And also I'll just make a note that in the public excluded part of our meeting, there's only minutes there. So if we can move those at the same time. Any corrections, first of all, to any of those minutes? Thank you. That's Councillor Morris, seconded by Deputy Mayor Salisbury. Any discussion? I'll put that. All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you very much. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest for today's meeting? Thank you. And there's no deputations, presentations or petitions. So moving on to the business of the day.
Mr Chairman, if I may.
Sure.
Just under Standing Orders 40 and 7C and D, if I may request permission to make a personal statement, please.
Yes, that's fine, and thank you. You did it pre-warming.
Thank you. Yesterday, media reported that as part of the Lagoima release of emails and texts between councillors, that 6 councillors had said that Baldock stifled debate and had screamed at staff and councillors to shut up. The issue about stifling debate has already been corrected through the report into the procedures of the May 19 Star Council meeting. Actually, the accusations about screaming at staff and telling councillors to shut up when chairing meetings have only been made by 1 councillor, not 6. In regard to the alleged accusation, I emailed the Chief Executive yesterday afternoon to ask for clarification on this. Primarily because if the public believe that sort of behaviour goes on here, it does our council no good in its reputation. My email and his replies are as follows. Dear Marty, it is reported in the Waikato Times Stuff.co article today that some of my council colleagues have made allegations that I have screamed at staff and told councillors to shut up. Can you please advise if any incidents of this behaviour has ever been reported to you by any staff at TCC during my tenure as Deputy Mayor this term? Hi Larry, I'm not aware of any accusations of you screaming at staff. Thank you Marty. Have any staff raised concerns about on any occasion while I've been chairing council committee meetings that I have told councillors to shut up? Hi Larry, I am not aware of any concerns. Have any concerns have been raised? Cheers. Subsequently, the media report has been amended at the discretion of the journalist to read, I screamed at a consultant 2 years ago. While I still maintain that this is not an accurate portrayal of that incident, since it was 2 years ago, it's best ignored. Thank you for the opportunity, Mr Chairman. This will be cheaper and quicker than a code of conduct complaint.
Thank you, Councillor Baldock, for your statement. Moving on to the business of the day, and agenda item 9.2, the annual report on Council's use of toxic agrochemicals for vegetation management policy. I'd like to welcome, first of all, Kath DeMonchi from TAF, and Kath has a presentation on the annual report. And if you can also, Kath, just introduce your fellow members. Thank you.
Morena everyone, councillors, staff and visitors, thanks for having us here today and for giving us the opportunity to speak to the work that we're doing. This is Dr. Lisa Denmead sitting beside me from Toi Ohomai. She's a member of TAF, and Bill Myhill is our chairperson. Bill's had a long involvement in the TAF group. We call ourselves TAF. It's a long acronym, the Toxic Agrochemicals Advisory Forum, and we exist out of the Policy on Vegetation Management. So we're a volunteer group. Is that loud enough? Okay. And so just up on the screen there, you'll see an overview of the work that we've been doing in the past year. Now, it's a while since I've used that. Okay. So one of the tasks that we carry out, we like to see what's happening with agrochemical use. So there is a database that TCC has which collects all the application jobs that contractors are doing. We've had long-term access to that, and we've been able to sort of look at how those volumes are changing over time. We've lost access to that in the last few months, and it's just become apparent from communication from Nick in the last few days that the problem is more than what we realised. We've realised that there's errors in the design of it, and we've had a little bit of work to improve that in the last year, but there's really some more work there to improve it, but now also a substantial problem with accessing it. So we really do lend our support to some urgent work there to actually have some certainty that we are gathering that data on what agrochemical use is going on across the city, and when we do look at the data, that what we understand from it is an accurate reflection of what's going on out there. At the moment, we do have a project, a third-year IT student project out at Toihomae. There's a group of students who are really eager, ready to put in some time to try and help with improving the design of the database. If we have an opportunity to connect with the right person at TCC, I think we could progress something quite quickly. I'm not sure about that background problem, but in terms of the design and the user-friendliness, it's a resourced opportunity, so I'm hoping we can see some action on that quite quickly. The students are ready to go. Last year we undertook some research through Toihomae, looking at 10 years of data analysis of agrochemical use. We didn't find that there was a significant reduction in agrochemical volumes being applied. We did find some problems with our opportunities there for analysis. One was that we didn't have any land areas for council land on a year-by-year basis, so we couldn't actually look at what the rate of application was over that time. We also found quite a few errors in the data and some variation in different types of work and different products. So it was a good snapshot after 10 years of having this policy and just sort of taking pause to look and see what's going on. And obviously out of that we have seen that there's weaknesses in that database. We'd like to see that improved really quickly and to do more of this analysis more often because we do see a policy that says that there's a commitment to reducing the use of agrochemicals across the city, and we would like to see that the data is reflecting that. Did you want to comment on the results for that? Okay. We didn't have any applications for new products in 2020, but we did have one request to make an amendment to a product that's already on Schedule 1, and TAF was happy to support that change. We really appreciated the level of detail that the contractors went into in regard to the species they're targeting and the ways that they're going to approach the use of the product. And we'd really encourage that other contractors in the future start looking at more detail around the particular job that they're trying to achieve and the ways that they can use that agrochemical to make sure that we're minimising public opportunities to come in contact with it. We'd also like to say that we do think that after 10 years, a little over 10 years, that it would be great to see that policy reviewed. We make little changes and tweaks to Schedule 1 on an annual basis, but it seems timely really after that period of time that we would look at the whole policy and see whether we're achieving what it's intending and whether we can improve on it. So we do support Nick's suggestion that we could do a policy review in 2021 if that would work with Council's work plan. Signage is an ongoing problem for us, but I think we're slowly sort of teasing out the different aspects of how we'd like to see some improvements there. If we take out the data on revegetation jobs from the agrochemical volumes information, we do see a slight reduction in glyphosate use across the city over 10 years, which is something to notice. That's great. But if that's a reflection of some of our reserves going glyphosate free, then we think that there should be opportunities to share that information with the public in a way that's easy for them to see and understand. So two aspects to the signage that we'd like to really see improved. One is that if someone walks into a reserve and they see a sign there, that they can understand what the status of that reserve is. Is it spray-free? Is it glyphosate-free? Is it a sprayed reserve? So quite simple signage, but something that's easy for any member of the public to access, whether it's on a sign there or somehow through the website. The other aspect of signage that we have difficulty with is the contractors, when they're on site doing jobs, there is a standard signage that they're supposed to use, which when we come across that on our walks, we can see it and we should be able to understand if someone's here spraying or if they were here 24 hours ago, what they sprayed and what we should be concerned about. But the quality of those signs is very variable. Quite often we can't read them, the dates might be wrong, the product name may not be something that we're familiar with because they've used a brand name rather than a chemical name or an active ingredient name. So we don't currently feel like, as users of reserves, that we can have certainty that when we come across these signs, we're going to know what's going on in that reserve at that time. Whether we walk around a corner and find someone spraying because the sign at the entrance said yesterday's date on it, and it was actually today. So we're still talking about how that could be improved, but TAF does think that that's something that's quite a high priority, so that users of reserves can have confidence that if they do see a sign, it is meaningful. The information on it is meaningful. The turf development that was undertaken in the last 12 months or so used a new product. It was approved just for the development work. The two reserves have now been developed, and we've seen a report from the turf consultant. There were a couple of things out of that that we had concerns with. One was that he made recommendations around the health, the safety of the product, and we don't think that any of the work that the consultant was doing could have evaluated whether or not there was a health concern there. We'd also noticed that it was supposed to be a residual product and it wasn't residual, so it wasn't sticking around long enough to do the job it was supposed to do. And there was a high lateral movement outside of the fenced area, which we thought was something of concern. The turf consultant thought that that shouldn't really be an issue, but really if something's been found 20 to 25 metres outside of the area where it's been used, that's really an infringement on the public's good faith if they think that they're walking outside of a safety fence and they're safe, but actually the product is well outside of that. So definitely room for a more critical evaluation of the use of that product, both in terms of health and safety, but also in terms of the cost, because from our understanding, additional weed control work was required, which shouldn't have been required if this product had done what it was supposed to do. And finally, on a positive note, we've got a couple of projects underway with Toi Ohomai. We're harnessing a bunch of schools around the area. They're interested to look at alternative weed control opportunities. So we've got a project rolling out at the moment using acetic acid. So the testing will go on in schools. We don't need any permissions to do it on public land. A lot of really passionate young scientists there, and also a lot of science teacher leaders around the area who are on board with it. And quite a few requests from them for the children to have an opportunity to present their findings to council. So I hope in 2021 we can make that happen. I'm pretty excited at the level of passion that's out there, and I can see a lot of these kids want to share their thoughts on what they're learning. The other project that is just coming together is a discovery project. We thought that this policy that we have, the schedule of regulation around agrochemical use, it could be quite unique in New Zealand, and we've never actually looked. So we're just waiting for confirmation about whether this project can go ahead with some funding from Toi Ohomai to have a graduate student go out and canvass all the territorial authorities around New Zealand to find out whether or not they have similar policies around vegetation management, reducing use of agrochemicals, any extra controls on chemicals that are over and above what the EPA controls, which is generally what New Zealand looks to. And what I really would like to see in that is positioning TCC or Tauranga in that national landscape. What do we look like? Are we doing something that's unusual, something that's a bit special? And if we are, then I think we should be talking about that a bit more. And we may also find that we can learn from other cool things going on in other territorial authority areas around the country. So we've, just a brief summary, we'd really like to see that database fixed, working, and we do have some student resourcing available to help with that. We'd really like to see that starting quickly. We want to see some significant progress with signage over the next 12 months, hopefully involving some dynamic online application. We think that the capability with online tools now is there, and that this should be something that is doable. Squinting at my own slide. We'd like to see the contractor signage improve, and yeah, we definitely like that opportunity for our local school kids to report on the findings of the Citizen Science Project. That's us.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Kath, for your presentation. Nick, can you just come up to the desk as well, if you don't mind, because I think there'll be questions for you as well, if you don't mind. Oh, okay. Okay, so what we'll do, first of all, we'll ask questions of TAF, and then we'll come back to you. Is that right? Okay, thank you. So, questions. I had Councillor Morris.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I note your firm position on bushy asparagus. So, in terms of the recommendations of TAF, it's kind of a question for staff, but I just want to put it out there, I suppose. How do we pick up TAF's recommendations? Because I know the staff recommendations A, B and C don't pick up all of the recommendations that we've been presented by this body. So question for you, sir, like a firm answer, I suppose.
Well, thank you. I was going to specifically ask that same question of Nick, because it's quite easily highlighted that their recommendations are not picked up in ours. So we will get that to you, Nick, when we get to your presentation. Thank you. Good question, though. I got Councillor Hughes and then Baldock.
Firstly, just thank you for all the work that you've put into this and the ongoing, obviously, excellent work across the board here. And we did speak to youth earlier who talked about opportunities for youth and engaging them with future pathways and with future opportunities to be involved in our city. And this is, you're talking about exactly the same thing. So there's lots and lots of positive outcomes that can come from this kind of work that you're looking at. Yes, I just have the same questions too of our staff, and I'm sure that can happen in the next section, so thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, thanks, Bill and Lisa, and it's Catherine, isn't it? Catherine, yeah. I know over the years we've always scratched our heads about, what we can use instead of the things that are nasty. I've been waiting for you to come because I wanted to ask about a product my daughter recommended and bought for me. And it's sold at the warehouse, called Organic Kiwi Garden Weed Killer. Very expensive, but I tried it and it killed everything. Are you familiar with it? It's supposed to be only an oil. It's supposed to be just concentrated oil. And
no. I mean, we're no experts on agrochemicals. We investigate them if they come up. So
yeah.
we'd probably need some time to look into it.
If you
but
could
just
have
because it says organic doesn't
I know.
necessarily mean it's a good thing.
I know. It's
my first answer.
It is a funny word, but if you could look at that one, it certainly kills stuff, but whether or not it's safe is another question, but,
Thank you.
Expand our budget probably to afford it.
There are a number of natural weed killers. Probably the most common and readily commercially available are those based on pine oil. If you go into a pine forest, under pine trees you'll find there is very little vegetation because of natural pine oils falling off the pine trees. There are many alternatives to synthetic chemicals. There was a paper produced some years ago which looked at a whole range of things, and it basically comes down to cost versus effectiveness. To go to one extreme, you do not need any chemical or of any kind, synthetic or natural. You can have an army of people out there pulling out weeds. Solves the unemployment problem, but what are the wage rates going to be to pay them?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Make a good point there, Bill. We've got Councillor Hollis, then Councillor Robson.
That fairly much answered my question. I was going to head down the pathway of the difference between metsulfuron and glyphosate, and I think you're just answering the question. It's cost per application, and a team of unemployed would be fantastic if we could help out in that area. I think that it's not a bad suggestion. The pine oil one would explain to me also why pine forests destroy agricultural land so not permanently but expensively to bring it back after pines have been on them. Anyway, thanks for the comments.
Thank you. Councillor Robson.
Yeah, look, thank you. I always find TAF reports illuminating and actually inspirational because you bring to us evidence and science, something that's generally often in short supply in this chamber. In that regard, and in the context of recently having signed off an annual plan, could I get confirmation from perhaps the Chief Executive or someone else, what funding do we give TAF? Because the work you do, if someone else speaks to that, it makes a stronger point.
As far as I know, we don't get any, but over the last year, all this work has been funded by Toi Homai research money, so...
Yeah, I mean, obviously the point of my question is that it is pointed. There's some great work done here, and I think we should be, I'm making a speech now, so Councillor Baldock will already be looking at standing orders. But yeah, the reason for the question clearly is to make the point that we need to fund people that hold us to account, that external watchdogs looking at what we do perform a vital role. And I thank you for the work you do. And but I would ask that someone note the lack of funding for these people.
Thank you. Yeah, we've made note of that. I don't know whether we help fund any of your meeting costs or time, but we do appreciate the work that you put into it. Yeah, okay. There is a long-term plan coming, exactly. Thank you for that. Any other questions from elected members? If that's the case, thank you very much, Bill, Kath and Lisa. Thank you again for the excellent work you do on behalf of our community, and we really appreciate it. And now we'll get on to our staff report and some of those questions that we've sort of pre-warned Nick about. So Nick, thank you. Is there anyone else, Nick, you're bringing to the table? Thank you. So I'll let you introduce your colleagues.
Morena, everybody. I'm Nick Lynch-Watson. I'm the Parks and Reserves Advisor in the Spaces and Places team. And with me today I have Rob Ranger and Lance Salt from Wildlands. They've prepared the report attached to mine in regard to the amendment to the use of metsulfuron. So if you do have any questions, they're here to help. So I won't go into too much detail today, but just summarise what's in my report, a lot of which TAF have been talked to today as well, so thank you very much for that. So the report is an annual report we bring to Council, just updating on our use of agrochemicals, the steps we've been taking to meet the objectives of the use of toxic agrochemicals for vegetation management policy, and any other items or changes we have to Schedule 1. And if anyone isn't aware, Schedule 1 is the list of agrochemicals in that policy permits us to use. that sits on top of national and regional legislation, which also control agrochemical use. So it's an additional control we have, and the policy talks to the objectives of its use and some controls, and the Schedule 1 limits those chemicals. And often, as is the case with metsulfuron, has specific detail around what can be used on, how it can be used, and that kind of thing. So, yeah, we've continued to work with TAF over the past year, and TAF have done a lot of work, particularly with the input of Toya Humai, and the representatives there have been really good in doing a lot of research. So that's been really good and helpful in us understanding that use. We have had the system errors in the reporting of our agrochemical use, so we don't have any accurate data to bring to you at the moment in terms of where we're going with that, which we've highlighted as something that needs to be urgently reviewed, and that's something that's been raised as an issue by TAF through the research they've done. Our contractors who often find it a time-consuming and difficult process in terms of their logging of use, notification logging of use, and public who we have to make that information, often quite technical and difficult to understand information, available too. So we have talked to digital services and are working through a request with them to amend that system. So we appreciate your support in progressing that. Metsulfuron methyl, there's a lot of detail in that report from Wildlands, which has been really good. It's a agrochemical that's is already in the policy for use, but was put in with a limited scope and in one case with a time frame from its use, which expires in a few weeks. So that kind of trial basis has been looked into, and it's come up with really positive results, and is now seen as a really key tool in our ecological area management. And so that's, and through the study we have, as Kath mentioned, identified quite closely where it's needed, and limited its scope in Schedule 1 to only those areas, and added some control on how it can be used around waterways and that kind of thing. So the amendments, the recommendations we have are around that metsulfuron, as well as a review of the system, and also a review, or looking into options for a review of the policy. We've talked to the Council's policy team, who are happy to include that as part of their policy review program investigation. So further work's required there, and so we'll look to that as a potential item for review next year. Happy to take any questions, as are Rob and Lance. And might be if we can get the TAF recommendations back up on the screen, because I can't.
Yeah, clearly there'll be a lot of,
because I know a few of you had questions around those, and I'm happy to.
Thank you. So Nick, do you want to talk through, or Nick and or Kath, want to talk through quickly and high level on each of those recommendations as to what our response may be?
Yep, I mean the first two we're absolutely behind, and we're working with TAF on that, as well as our digital services team and contract managers at council and contractors. Yep, so that's 100% something we are improving. In terms of TAF access, there has been a brief time with changes in staff and a restructure that meant we weren't able to access some of that information for a time, but we are now. But we do want to there's a need to improve that. So we're definitely working with them on that. Signage is an ongoing item that we are looking into. There's it's kind of an evolving thing, and there's issues, I guess, for us in terms of working with contractors and what they're legally required to do and required to do under our contracts, which I guess to change that brings up a much bigger conversation in terms of price and contract amendments and that sort of thing. And we have quite a few contracts over council within different teams. So while we are working to do what we can, and we will continue to do so with TAF, I don't have anything kind of concrete to bring to you today in terms of what we are able to do, as well as the kind of dynamic mapping information, is something which I have been pushing with our digital services team for a while now, and it's definitely on their radar, but not something they've been able to provide at this stage. I guess the citizen science report is something we're behind and working with TAF on, as well as the research project, which we're a partner with them and getting funding or applying for funding from Tohumai to get somebody to come and work with us in council to do that research.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Nick, for those responses. Now we've got several questions. Councillor Hughes and then Arbery.
Thank you. So just around one question I have is, have we looked to other cities to see what they're doing, and is there some best case scenarios in other cities? Are we following any leads in terms of what we do around signage and in terms of what we do around our strategy going forward?
We have talked to several other councils in the past. I guess that reporting research proposal we have with TAF and Tohumai that's exactly what that is designed to do, to canvass as many local authorities as we can as to what they're doing, whether they have a policy like ours or not, and any other opportunities or things they might be developing that we can use. I know our contractors often work across several local authorities, and they've in the past come to us with things that they've been doing in other areas, and we've tried to see how that might work or things we can change. But really this research thing is where we're hoping to take that and really get on top of what we're doing in comparison to everybody else.
Thank you. Just one more question around signage and procurement and the contracts with. Is there a need to look at how the flexibility in the contracts that we have or that we set up in order to be able to respond to needs and issues within our space? I mean, it does seem like the recommendation for signage, given the fact that some of them seem to be out of date and some of them are not really fit for purpose, seems to be quite a good outcome for us to head for. But if we're tied up with a problem, is it a problem with our procurement? Where is it sitting there?
Yep, I'll try to answer that. I'm not a contract manager, so I'm not over the kind of details and technicalities of all our contracts. But you want to have a word, Brian?
Warren might have something to contribute. Thank you, Warren.
Manager, so you should be able to help you.
You may recall recently we've just tendered a number of contracts within the open space area last year, so this is the first year that they're running, and what we have done is included signage within the KPI measurements. So that is around signage in appropriate places, the accuracy of the information on the signage, and also the overall quality really of the signs.
Thank you. One
Another-
more quick supplementary.
Sorry, yeah. I mean, in terms of that, then, is this specific to this one area, or is that like a general signage thing you're talking?
That's within the open spaces contracts. I can't talk for transportation or stormwater.
Thank you. Councillor Arbery.
Yeah, I'm just wondering how big an issue these things are. So are we compliant with the Health and Safety at Work Act and the Hazardous Substances and New Organisms Act?
Yeah, we comply with all those.
Yeah, happy to move, Chair, but a question. With regard to putting KPIs in contracts, they're of course pointless unless there's some active measurement relating to the KPI taking place. So what processes do we have in place to monitor the quality and appropriateness of signage in these areas? How much resource are we putting into that space?
So staff are doing quality audits throughout our contracts all the time. If they come across inaccurate signage or signage that has been out too long or is not in place, then we note that and it becomes a KPI issue. KPIs are measured annually and there are consequences for the contractors in terms of the length of contract. So our contracts are set up generally 3 to 4 years with a number of plus ones, and if they fail KPIs, then they're at risk of that extra year.
Supplementary, would it be possible to circulate to councillors the results of those audits so we are comforted that all our contractors are fulfilling their requirements? Obviously, if those audits are taking place, there's records, that information should be available, hopefully without too much effort. Would it be possible to circulate the results of those audits without placing too big a burden on the organisation?
Yeah, we could report on that.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll make a note in the minutes, and your Democracy Services can make sure that gets circulated to us or uploaded to Stella. Thank you. Councillor Hollis.
Just something I'm reading in this, it talks about metsulfuron only being useful for specific species and that we need to change something to allow it to be used more prevalently. What are the species and which ones isn't it useful on?
So that's right, different species require different types of agrochemical to control them. So just off the top of my head, metsulfuron is useful on arum lily, agapanthus, common asparagus, bushy asparagus, gorse, Montbretia, canna lily, crinum lily, elephant's ear, ivy, a few others.
I'm just wondering why we're being told about that inside this report. There's a thing that says metsulfuron is only used on certain species, and then below that it says it needs an amendment for us to be able to use more of it. And I wonder which species it doesn't work on, which would require us to keep using glyphosate.
With reference to what metsulfuron can be used on, it's within the policy. So the policy has a table at the back of it which lists the number of chemicals and what plants they can be used on. So at the moment it's very limited in what metsulfuron can be used on in terms of what we can apply because of the policy. So what we're looking is to enlarge that list so that we can use metsulfuron on a broader range of species because they are it's the best chemical to use on those particular species.
So just so that I'm really clear, we're not using the safer chemical because we have a table that isn't complete enough to use it on new species?
The table is about using the most effective chemical on a particular species.
Just a supplementary to that, so does that mean that we'll be using less glyphosate as a result of increasing our use of mouse sulfuron?
That is the aim, yes.
Thank you.
The species that sulfuron can't be used on, is that a very big list?
In terms of the number of species of weeds out in the community, that's a huge list. What we've done is just identify the harder to kill species that we know metsulfuron is effective on.
Thank you. Dr. Lisa, did you have one? Thank you. Thanks very much.
And thanks for that.
Thanks very much. Any other questions from elected members? Councillor Hughes?
I just have one other question then. In terms of signage, going back to that, how can we, do we need to make a recommendation in here to get signage better? I'm getting some nods from the back, and I think, so I'm just wondering, I mean, I'm happy to add something around signage into our recommendations today. And I'm wondering what that might look like, and if I've got a seconder for adding that.
So what I suggest, if Councillor Robson said he was going to move the recommendations, and if you wanted to second that, between the two of you may want to add a paragraph D. Yep. And Warren, you may have.
The development of a standard signage would be of benefit.
Thank you. So Councillor Robson, would you like to move something appropriate? Thank you.
Yeah, if I outline what I'm happy to move, and I'm happy to take a seconder who I believe has got one issue, but I've already got a D in mind. So what I'm proposing to move is the recommendations as outlined by staff, with the addition of a D, which says that this committee effectively requests staff to prepare a report to council on the issues and options, including partnering with Toi Ohomai for funding the work of TAF. That's what I'd like to have as a D, because I believe we're missing a trick here. And I'm more than happy to have adopt an E, which, and with the indulgence of the chair, I think needs to pick up not just the signage, but the other recommendations made by TAF. You know, it's...
Yeah, I think that's appropriate. So what we'll do, what I suggest we do now is we'll have a 10-minute break while we just work on the wording of those. So we'll be back at 11:05 and we'll just work on those recommendations. Thank you very much, and thank Right, got everyone here. Thank you, Councillor Baldock, Councillor Granger, Deputy Mayor. Thank you. Now we've got now 5 recommendations for 5 paragraphs. Councillor Robson is moving, seconded by Councillor Hughes. Would you just like to talk to it, Councillor Robson? Thank you.
Yeah, I can be pretty quick. I mean, I think it behoves us to work with those people in our community that want to work with us, and clearly TAF does. One can see the value they're adding already, and I think rather than sometimes, as we're inclined to do when people challenge us to put the shutters up, I think we should be looking to embrace that, and I think we should be looking in E particularly to acknowledge and respond to the challenges that have been made. I think those challenges are positive, respectful, and extraordinarily valuable for our wider community. So I commend all 5 parts of this recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Hughes?
Yeah, I'd like to acknowledge the work of the staff in this area as well. I mean, the main goal here is to reduce the amount of chemicals that we use on our land, and that takes a lot of work, and the work is going in. But also the other side of that is how the community can become involved in that, and that when the community can understand what is being used and how it's being used. So the work that we need to do to make that clear and consistent across the board for the community is something that TAF can really help us to understand. So yeah, I approve all of those recommendations. Thanks.
Any other councillors? Thank you. Just speaking to it briefly myself, when it comes to E, and we can just include this in the minutes, the report that comes back, I'd like to see some reference to some of the previous trials we've done. This council over the last sort of 4 or 5 years have trialled non-chemical weed killers, etc. So I'd like to see some reference to those reports in that as well, because I think it'll make useful reading, especially for the newer elected members. So I fully endorse all these 5. So that's the case. Right reply, Councillor Robson. Thank you. I'll put those 5 paragraphs, recommendations. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. And thank you again, Kath, Bill and Lisa, for your fantastic work in this space. Right, moving back now to 9.1, which is the executive report. And I'll just bring this up on the screen. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll go through basically page by page to be efficient, and then any specific queries, please raise those. We've got all the executive team here except for Christine. So that's growth and strategy, and growth. So if there's any questions for Christine, Marty may be able to answer them. So page 58. Councillor Baldock.
Quickly reminding myself, in regard to the mobile site, so we're nearly there, are we? Is that the final conclusion there? And there was going to be a small ceremony at some point when we got there, but we never got there. Will that be part of the final conclusion of it all?
Yeah. Yes, it will be.
Thank you. Page 59. Then we move into the infrastructure group. Page 59. Page 60. You got something, Councillor Baldock? That's right. That's fine. Page 61. Councillor Arbery.
So in terms of the issue with people parking in the cycle lane, what's been happening with that?
So during the completing stages of the project, we put letters on the vehicles, information brochures, and got quite a lot of shift with that. But there were some persistent people parking there still, and we still had issues with it towards the end of last week, particularly with one vehicle. I know that we kept an eye on from TTOC, and I think that was the one that made it to the Bob Times as well, that same vehicle. That is now gone. I rode over it first thing yesterday morning and got a free run. So yeah, and I'm not sure what it looked like this morning, but Karen or Brendan or Marcel, Sonia, completely clear again this morning. So obviously we are getting compliance, and we're having the educational drive continues as well.
Councillor Bulldog, then Hughes.
Just the bus shelters, because I didn't. The attachment was at the end, but it is in this item. Fantastic to see the report. Thank you, Nick. Just in regard to the ones which are in R, which is refused, what is happening next? When is the hearing going to be, or the objections heard for those? And second question is the ones that still haven't replied. They've had 2 letters. You know, when do we just go ahead, or?
Yeah, so this is one of the things we talked about during the annual planning process, when we planned for that originally 20 and then landed on 30 for the year, and the issues that we have around that. And we had been talking about having a hearing early, but we do feel that we need some more evidence around that, and the B card will help us with that. That's now being implemented, so that will give us a lot more data in terms of patronage and where people get on and off. And the other piece of data or help, I guess we would need to make hearings really useful, is the guidance that will come out of the transport agency. So they're creating a level of service guideline for bus use, bus stops, etc., which is under development. So we talked about that earlier, that these are 2 pieces of work that will greatly assist us through that process. If we were to hold the hearings now, the argument is that, well, actually we think this is a good place to have a bus stop, but what do we base that on? So it leaves it a little bit exposed, we think, and that's why we're suggesting to move on the ones that we can, where we don't have the objections, and keep focusing on that, and then come back to these ones. Some of them we have looked at alternative locations, and I think we've got 2 or 3 that we have now completed where we had objections completed because they were shifted.
Follow up on it. So how do we expose ourselves if, you know, I mean, what are their rights of appeal after we have a hearing? I'm not aware that they can do anything further. Can they? And in the regard to the ones that just simply don't reply to our letters, one of them is, you know, where we had a bus stop but it was on the wrong side of the road because the regional council changed the direction. And so elderly people are standing in the rain. Are we required legally to mail them how many times? How often, how long does this have to go?
Yeah, so the hearings we were hoping would give us the decisions around that. I'm not sure, Brendan, if you were able to fill us in with any more detail about the ones that are still outstanding.
Look, I think the ones that are outstanding, generally we try and do 2 letters, see if we can get a response from the owners. Our next step will probably be door knock, see if we can get physical contact with that owner. It is difficult if you don't receive any communication, because if we just go and put one in, we're going to get complaints that there's suddenly this structure that's appeared. Because one of the things we have to look at is, even if they're in agreement where's the best place in terms of eye lines, views out windows and those sort of things. So ideally we would like to have contact with those owners, if possible.
Thank you. Councillor Hughes and then Salisbury.
I just wondered from the one thing around the cycleway, just wanted to know whether cyclists and kids what the feedback's been using and if there's been lots of people using it. How's it going?
Council, at the moment we're having an average of 84 people using it a day, which is up from the original 49 average per day. We've got fantastic feedback, things like it's a real dream to ride on, please build more. So it's going really well at the moment. We'll be monitoring the outcomes of the project that cover a range of things such as safety outcomes, how many people are using it, and we'll be providing a report back to Council in terms of benefits realised for the project over the coming months.
Thank you. That's great. I just have one question around the bus shelter. I get a reasonable amount of people who Facebook and say, I'd like a bus stop here. Do we have like the whole scope of where we think bus stops should go, or is it helpful for people to also say where they think they would like a bus stop at this point?
Oh, it's definitely helpful to get the public's input to where it goes. A lot of the shelters that we're looking at are currently bus stops, so that's sort of an upgrade. But
Sorry, I meant shelters rather than stops. Sorry.
right, yeah. So any input and what's driving locality of where we put them now is public, the public asking for them, and then we look into to whether that's suitable or not, and whether it's just the one person or whether it's a bigger uptake. So that is an important input to the decision making now. We hope though that will swing towards a bit more evidence-based in terms of patronage when we get the B card data.
Great, thanks.
No, I was just going to cover off one of the issues we have at the moment is we get requests for a bus stop or a bus shelter, sorry. We have no idea of the patronage and the number of people using those. So the B card is really vital, because if we can do 30 a year and we've got 70 on the list, we need to do the 30 that have the biggest number of users. And that's the missing link that we have at the moment.
And 30 a year is one every week and a half.
Yeah, I just have a question around 15th Ave bus stops. There's, I think, temporary bus shelters there, or bus stops there, but no shelter. It says in here that they're refused. Does that mean that we're not going to put an actual bus shelter there? I noticed that there's like medical facilities and there's probably older people coming in and out of there.
No, not necessarily. So that's the hearing process. I'm not familiar with a specific location, but the R's that are refused at the moment are due to go through that hearing process where you will hear the reasons for or against and ultimately make a decision.
Thank you. Just before, Councillor Arbery, do you have all those hearings all in one go, or is it like each site has its own separate hearing, or is there a sort of a multi-site hearing?
I don't know. I think that's just something we will have to chuck in the melting pot and consider when we get closer to the time. When I started here and we talked about these hearings, I thought that it was something that we had done in the past, but we haven't. So it's new to council. So
thank you for that.
Have we? Oh, sorry. I saw you nodding. Yeah. Okay. I thought you.
We were breaking new ground, Nick.
Right.
Pioneering.
Thank you. Hopefully on someone's front lawn. No, not the front lawn, the berm. Okay, Councillor Arbery.
Yeah, I saw, it must have been the draft agenda that I saw, there was a list of all bus stops, including bus shelters, including ones that have been requested by the community and were under various stages of investigation. So just wanted to confirm that that sort of a list does exist, and some of our submitters have been heard in terms of their location suggestions.
Yeah, the earlier list you saw was our working example. So the list in the agenda is the tidied up version. So every request that comes in goes onto that list, and then they move their way through. So as they are completed, they drop off. It's only at completion that they drop off that list.
And being a live document, the intention is for this to have the 30, I guess, aspirational one for the year on it. So, I mean, we can include it regularly to PSOC, for instance, as an agenda item.
Maybe just a quick note then. I think we might be missing some from Glenn Crowther that he came and presented to us in the annual plan in Automoto. We can sort that
Thanks,
offline.
We'll take that away and make sure we
Thank you. Thank you,
tie
everyone.
those together. Thank you.
Okay, that's page 61. Page 62, so that's getting on to regulatory and compliance. Page 63. Oh yes, kia ora, Emily.
Kia ora, this is in relation to the Arataki Park free camper. Who would I direct that to? Kia ora, Barbara. Just wondering, 2 years is a long time for somebody to be of no fixed abode. And I see that Oranga Tamariki had some involvement with a child being on site as well. My questions are, have the People's Project been involved at all?
Kia ora. I'm not sure about the People's Project, but what I can report at this point is that through that period, that 2-year period, our bylaw staff have been working closely with the person who was residing in the reserve. But the update on that is that he has now moved. He has now left the reserve, and that we have cleaned up that site. Just, I guess, to give you some comfort about the young person. Sorry, to give you some confidence about the young person, his mother and grandparents lived quite close. So while he did spend some time with his father on the reserve, he did also have his other parent and his grandmother close. So he was well looked after.
Oh, ngā mihi, well done.
Thank you. So yeah, there's a successful conclusion to that. So thank you for asking. Okay, page 63. Anything else on page 63?
Just at the bottom, just a shout out to a very talented staff member that came up with a pretty incredible thing there. I think it's well worth noting. In your area, is it, Barbara?
It is, thank you. Yeah, it has been very successful, and I'll certainly pass on your best wishes.
No, thank you very much for that, and all the best for the awards. When is that happening? When do we find out? Oh, you'll come back to us, whatever the result. That'll be good. Thank you. So that's page 63. Page 64. Page 65. Page 66. Councillor Baldock.
Just paragraph 53 at the top. With the Ombudsman's audit, will it be including this last round of Lagoima inquiries as part of that audit, or was it all pre that?
No, it won't be. It's been delayed. I received an email last night at the end of August or something. Yeah. Obviously a very busy man.
Just on the Māori representation, can we get an opinion from the Youth Advisory Forum on their thoughts around that decision? And if it's useful, I'd be happy to go along with a colleague who doesn't agree with me and have a debate with them.
Thank you. So on that specific issue about the Youth Advisory Group, that's your area, isn't it, Gareth? So can you make a note of Councillor Arbery's offer?
Yeah, we'll just link you with Lisa McKinnon, who manages the relationship with the YAG, and we can do that.
Thank you. So, page 66, Councillor Robson.
Yeah, if there's any dialogue with any group, I think it's important that those links are shared, that the content in those transactions, communications, conversations, meetings, we make sure it's shared. So while informality is good, we need to make sure that, you know, we get a symmetry of information and interaction. I think that's quite important as well.
Thank you. Yep, that makes good sense. Page 66. Councillor Baldock.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The vessel works update, it goes over the page to paragraph 61. With the announcement that New Zealand Marines successfully lobbied the government to relax border restrictions for vessels coming into New Zealand, this is of course good news for our vessel works, but what will we be hearing about the provisions for quarantine in this regard to keep the community comfortable with this?
Yes, so through the chair, so all that has been being worked through with the appropriate authorities in terms of quarantine requirements and so forth. So it is still strict quarantine, it is still strict testing. Nothing has changed from that perspective. It's just that a lot of these vessels are on multi-week voyages effectively to get here, therefore they have a quarantine component as part of that process. But it's still absolutely strictly in accordance with all requirements.
Just imagine the public will wonder where they're going, what hotel are they using, and they'll find we don't have one. No, we do, but that would be good information so people know that it is. And
Thank you. So we're now on page 67. Councillor Robson.
It may be a bit of a stretch, but it's been raised informally. I'm aware that the issue around our place and commercial rents, the question, it's circulating, and I'm just looking under property management facilities update, and it talks about LTOs, and obviously I don't know what's happening in that space, whether we're renegotiating, lowering the charges, whatever. But in that context, where are we with the our place commercial rate, in inverted commas, conversation, evidence gathering, information seeking? Has anyone got that on their list on the staff side?
Yes, absolutely. It came through an action as a result of one of your informals, and it will be responded to by the end of the week.
Thank you.
Page 68. Page 69. Yep, Councillor Robson.
Yeah, while we're doing shout outs, the SAP project going live, having been involved in major IT implementation exercises, generally they're associated with headlines that relate to chaos, confusion, overspend. The successful go live of that project, I think, should be noted, and personally, my congratulations to the team. That is a big deal for this organisation.
Thank you very much, Councillor Robson, and I'm sure we'd all echo those congratulations to the team, so thank you. Page 69. Page 70. Page 71. Page 72.
happy to move, Mr. Chair.
Thank you to Councillor Baldock, and seconded by Councillor Robson. So, would you like to speak to it? Thank you.
Yeah, just briefly, every month, and this was coming to council agenda during COVID lockdown, but at PSOC committee, when you read through these reports, I personally am pretty proud of the organisation and what good work's going on across it. And you always hope that more people in the public would get a closer look at, what's going on, especially when you see some of the awards that different parts of our department win. And so I just commend it really and thank the staff. I think the format of it is good. We're getting really good information. We're not having to spend, as we used to, hours and hours and hours sometimes trying to keep in touch with things. This is going really well, so thank you.
Any other councillors would like to speak? So back to you, Councillor Robson. Thank you. No right reply. I'll put that, all those in... you try. I'll put that, all those in favour say aye. Against, carried. Thank you very much, and again thank you to the Executive for your very comprehensive and very positive report, so thank you for that. Item number 9.3. Ngātai Road bylaw amendment, and this is you, Nick, or you're the authoriser. Thank you, Nick.
Yes, that's right. So this is we are asking for a recommendation to council to amend the bylaw so that we can enforce the parking along Ngātai Road. It's not for PSOC to do the bylaw change, so. But we thought we're really keen to fast track this process. Although we've had a couple of good days, you never know what happens. So we want to be able to enforce the parking situation. So we're keen, if there are any questions or any debate to be had, to have it here, and then we can just hopefully pass a recommendation to council.
I'll move that.
A second.
Okay, so moved by Councillor Hughes, seconded by Councillor Arbery. First of all, before we speak to it, were there any specific questions from anyone? No. So Councillor Hughes, you can speak to it.
Yeah, we've invested a lot of money in this project, and it's showing great results. And it seems a shame that a few cars sitting in it can put people at risk. It's a no-brainer.
Yeah, it's a lane meant to move people, not a parking lot.
Any other discussion? Councillor Robson?
Yeah, just a process issue, I suppose. I mean, obviously happy to support the motion. It just naturally flows. I'm just surprised that it wasn't, if you like, embedded in the process, and we've sort of gone live and now saying we need to change this policy. One would have thought in the project planning this would have been done at a point.
That's a fair question, actually. Yep.
So it's just observation. I'm not seeking a response, but in speaking to the motion, I was surprised that the fact that this arrived here as a particular item.
Brendan, you got something to add on that? Thank you.
Yeah, look, in future, it will be done earlier so that as we come to the end of the project, it is ready to go before we go live. The reason we don't do it when we put the project up for approval is potentially we've still got a lot of stakeholders consultation. We don't want to appear it to be a foregone conclusion, but we do need to get the timing slightly better than we've got this one. So our apologies for that.
Thank you. Good to refine our processes as we learn. Thank you. Councillor Baldock?
Yeah, just in the context of the recommendation, this one project, the first off the ranks really, I've just been getting feedback from staff behind me in the break that people are seeing what can be in the city and what we hope will be a connected set of cycleways right across, and the quality of them, the safety of them, and so on. So we do need to make sure the bylaws are in place to provide that safety. But it's great work. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Right reply, Councillor Hughes.
Yeah, I just also want to congratulate the team, and it's the first of a very exciting journey, and we've got a great team working on this. Exciting bike journey that Bill's going to join us on any moment now.
Thank you very much. So I'll put that. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you very much. And our last item of business, 9.4, the Three Waters Reform Program update, which is a very significant, or will have a big significant impact on all councils around New Zealand. Nick, you'd like to speak to that, please?
Yeah, maybe suggest to take it as read and answer any questions around it. Just some brief commentary, and that this is a very early heads up. So central government is looking at regulatory reform through taumata arawai, so that's the quality component of it, and then there's another component which is to reform the water service delivery into larger scale entities or providers. So this is the starting point for that journey to encourage providers to talk to the neighbours across regional boundaries to see whether gains in that service provision can be made. And they are encouraging that collaboration with a carrot to the tune of about $700 million around the country. And in order to get some of that carrot, you sign up to an MOU, which is non-binding. And basically, the information that's the collateral that's at the back of this paper is pretty much all we know at this point. So it's a fast-moving process between local government New Zealand and DIA. They've established a steering committee who was here a couple of weeks ago, and many of you were there. But this is just basically providing what the collateral that we got, the information that we got at that time across all councillors, so that you all have the same information then. We are expected to sign up to that MOU by the end of August. So we will come to you when we know a little bit more information, what it actually means to sign up, and if there's not only a carrot but a stick, or however that works, so that you can make an informed decision on behalf of council as to whether to sign up or not.
Thank you, Nick. I think several of us were there on Thursday. Yeah. Councillor Arbery, we'll do questions first before we move. Thank you, Councillor Arbery. Oh, have we moved? Any questions? Councillor Robson?
I went to the meeting, just a sidebar note that it's a terrible venue to put a screen in front of. No one can see the screen or see the speakers. It's a terrible venue for that type of event. But saying that, implicit in it is a question, I believe, around amalgamation, and I know explicitly they're saying that does not require it. There is a question coming. But I look at the recent report in response to the RMA, I look at what Infrastructure New Zealand is saying, I look at the Productivity Commission and their report where they were explicitly precluded from addressing the amalgamation issue, by definition saying that we know what you'll say about it, so we don't want you to go there. And I look at our own issue with our buses. Is there a point that we need to take, and I suppose here I'm looking to Chief Executive in some senses, is there a point that we will need to take a position on amalgamation to provide some guidance to staff and how they respond to papers coming out of central government? Or does he feel that at the moment we're not yet there? And if I prejudiced the answer, it was deliberate.
As always, I think you're correct in stating that we're not quite there. Yeah.
Thank you. It's definitely a political discussion, absolutely, to be had rather than staff or management, but yeah. Okay, now that recommendation's been moved by Councillor Arbery and it was seconded by Councillor Baldock. Would you like to speak to it, Councillor Arbery?
Yeah, I mean, Three Waters reform, it's not overly interesting to some people, but I really think this is a big topic that as councillors, elected members, we need to be paying attention to. This is potentially half our assets or half our debt shifting out of TCC as an organisation. Still the same community having to pay for that infrastructure. This, in terms of I suppose, environmental risks or opportunities, this is probably the biggest one that's faced local government for many years, and we should be paying attention. In terms of the stick, I think there is a stick. The carrot is, if you sign this MOU that's apparently completely non-binding with apparently no negative downsides, which sounds really good. So, I mean, at the moment it sounds like that's a no-brainer to sign that MOU. But the stick is we're going to have a regulator put in, and they're going to have certain water quality standards and measures that we'll have to meet. And to meet those new standards, that's going to have a cost. So the stick is the regulation that comes with this proposed change to the three waters.
Yeah, that's quite well summed up. I think I'm not so concerned about the regulator in regards to our potable water, given that we've had very high quality standards there for some time. But we will probably be forced to deal with stormwater with regulation too, which is going to be a cost. My main concern is just how much we're going to be subsidising the rest of the bay if it goes that broad, because they will be bringing their water services up to a standard to meet the regulations. And you know, we have for a long time in the city spent very big money on getting top quality infrastructure in for the delivery of potable water, and dealing with wastewater too. You know, it's a major. So we'll just see how we go. But obviously, it's a no-brainer when it comes to council that we do become part of it. But we hope that we don't end up subsidising cross boundaries without any great benefit to our citizens, really, who have paid already for many years.
There was a good summary from Councillor Arbery. I don't like the idea of signing up to something without a view of the stick at all. I would prefer to wait until the stick has been shown, and I think that we could easily do that.
Thank you. Councillor Robson.
Fear for the upbringing that some of my colleagues have had, this talk of sticks. And, I also love the use of the tautology, negative downsides. I've never seen a positive downside in my life. However, there are some big issues in here. So I'm going to use the phrase fishhooks, because we live on the coast, and I know our chief executive that fishing resonates with him. There is an issue around asset transfer in here, loss of control, and anyone who understands how Watercare operates or who aspires to a chief executive salary in the order of $750,000 will understand some of the issues around that. Where I'm extraordinarily positive and have been for many years is in the idea of independent regulation. We see here in our very own city the issue of conflict where a regulator has another role. If you want to see that in very large letters, go and look at the Mount Eyre shed, where the regulatory body is, in my view, compromised beyond an acceptable level by virtue of their commercial relationship with the port, in fact their part ownership of it. So I like the separation of a regulator from the people doing the task. I like the idea of national standards. I would love a national EPA. There is some good stuff in here, but it is complex. I understand Councillor Hollis's concern at one level, but I thought I heard reassurance from staff that we will not be asked to sign an MOU blind, and I appreciate Nick Johansson's reassurance on that point. This is big stuff, and we probably need to make sure that, if nothing else, our community is well informed about what's happening, the upsides and the downsides, and not just rely on central government to prosecute the engagement, and I use the word prosecute deliberately. We need to make sure that we engage our community early, honestly, fully, and transparently with regard to the implications of some of these discussions. But improving standards, external regulation, independent of us, I think has real value.
Thank you. Any other comments from elected members? Before I go to Councillor Arbery for his right of reply. So just speaking to it briefly myself, yeah, I was at the session over at the Mount. This is probably the biggest reform that we're ever going to see in our lifetimes for local government. Thank you. And it has huge implications. If you take water out of our council organisation, it has huge implications for our balance sheet, for our staffing, for what's left for us as councillors to then preside over. So yeah, huge implications, and something that we all need to make sure that we address and are interested in as councillors, elected members, because it is significant. Councillor Arbery.
Yeah, just a few points. Every time I bike to the top of a hill, there's a big downside opportunity. Yeah, that's it. In terms of the MOU, we don't know what that looks like yet. So once we have a bit of clarity, then we'll find out what we will consider signing. And there's still a lot of uncertainty about the whole arrangement. So I think the issue of some councils having invested heavily in their assets, whereas other councils having sweated their assets and leaving them a bit more dilapidated, is a real issue. So I would expect that when they're pulling up this proposal, they'd be looking at ways to make sure there's a fair, I suppose, allocation of assets or ownership based on the value or the condition of your assets, but we don't know what that looks like yet, so at the moment that's all speculation. And in terms of the entity structure, this they made it very clear at the briefing that this isn't water care for everyone. In fact, they're going to do a fit-for-purpose entity that could potentially be legislated so that it suits the needs or I suppose the operations of that organisation. So there's still a lot of unknowns, and I think at the moment we're just in a wait and see space, but the carrot sounds pretty good to me at the moment.
Thank you very much. Okay, so that being the case, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. And I believe that brings us to the end of our business. I think we had a unanimous vote on everything today. That's encouraging. So I don't believe there's anything else, is there? No late items. So that being the case, we don't need to move into public excluded. So I will declare the meeting closed, and thank you very much, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day.